How's it going, everyone? I'm Devin Howard. If you like knowing what's going on with your favorite teams, click subscribe to our channel and then hit me up on Instagram at Devin Howard. In the NBA, sometimes making a trade will really come back to bite you and haunt you forever, or at least until the next trade deadline. Basketball teams are never shy about making big deals. Throwback to when the Pelicans recently requested 6 to 8 draft picks to give up Davis to the Lakers. Yeah, that was a major joke. 6 to 8 draft picks? Come on.
Oh, please.
So I'm still not over that whole thing, but because there's so much on the line with these deals, it's really important to make sure they're well thought out so that you end up better off in the long run. But we've seen it time and time again. A team undervalues and then trades a player who ends up becoming a superstar. So let's dive into the most shocking and worst NBA trades in history, starting with that fateful moment when the Golden State Warriors gave up Vince Carter. Carter was drafted to the Warriors back in 1998, but on that draft day, the Warriors sent Carter to the Toronto Raptors with some cash for forward Antoine Jamison. Carter immediately turned into a top player, winning Rookie of the Year, and I'm sure the Warriors look back and regret that choice.
Big mistake. Big. Huge.
Okay, now we've got to talk about when the Timberwolves traded Brandon Roy. This was one of those moments in NBA history where you just have to stop and ask,
what the hell were you thinking?
The answer? They probably weren't thinking. The Minnesota Timberwolves drafted shooting guard Brandon Roy with the number 6 overall pick in the 2006 draft. Then they turned around and immediately offered him up to the Portland Trail Blazers for their shooting guard, Randy Foye. Foye never became the superstar I'm sure the Timberwolves hoped he'd become, while Roy became a highly coveted player and star in Portland. Sadly, knee injuries ended his career early, but still, the Timberwolves probably look at him and remember the time they blazed the wrong trail entirely.
I regret it.
But that's not as bad as when the Pacers traded Paul George to the OKC Thunder for Oladipo and Sabonis in 2017. This was a shocking moment in NBA trade history. The Pacers gave up a player who some consider to be the second greatest player in history for an overworked combo guard making $20 million a year. No one ever thought George would end up in Oklahoma, but there he was, and what happened next made matters even worse. Oladipo transformed from a salary cap burden to a franchise player literally overnight, and Sabonis became one of the league's most efficient young players and catapulted the Pacers into the playoffs. Sometimes teams have to take a risk, but man does it suck when an undiscovered superstar gets moved. More on the Oklahoma City Thunder, we have to mention when they traded James Harden. They took Harden with a 3rd overall pick in 2009. Off the bench, he became a 2-scoring 6th man for 3 seasons, but in the 2012 season, the Thunder handed Harden off to the Houston Rockets in return for Kevin Martin, Jeremy Lamb, and draft picks. After that, Harden became a star, averaging 27.9 points and 7.7 assists per game with the Rockets. So the Thunder were just sitting there like,
damn it. Damn it.
Okay, now we're gonna throw it back to the 80s, people. Yep, we're taking it back a few decades to the time when the Phoenix Suns decided to trade away their hybrid point guard, shooting guard, Dennis Johnson, in return for very little. At the time, Johnson was 28 years old and had finished the 1982-83 season, averaging 14.2 points and 5.0 assists per game for the Suns, but they still didn't want to keep him around. Over the next handful of seasons with the Celtics, Johnson made 1 All-Star team and won 2 championships, averaging 17.3 points per game in the postseason from 84 to 87.
I messed up.
For our next worst trade in NBA history, let's discuss when the 76ers traded Drew Holiday to the Pelicans for draft rights to Nerlens Noel and a 2014 first-rounder. This whole deal was part of GM Sam Hinkie's rebellious and unconventional approach to the NBA. At the time, nobody knew Holiday was on the move. He was a young, high-upside point guard signed to a reasonable contract. He'd even made the All-Star team the year before. Hinkie was looking for a clean slate here and decided to put up the Sixers' best asset to achieve that. He got an esteemed prospect who wouldn't play until the next season, and first-rounder Dario Saric and Markelle Fultz. Now let's take a walk into the not-so-distant past to the moment when the Clippers traded Blake Griffin, Bryce Johnson, and Willie Reed to the Pistons for Avery Bradley, Tobias Harris, and Boban, and a 2018 first-rounder and a 2019 second-rounder. Now, I don't think anyone ever thought Griffin would end up with the Pistons. He was signed to a $171 million extension in the offseason. Literally, no one ever slightly thought that he would be traded. And also, who knew that the Pistons were interested in buying? This This trade came out of left field and was certainly a shock to practically everyone.
I couldn't believe it.
No one could. This list wouldn't be complete without mentioning Darren Williams' trade from Utah Jazz to New Jersey Nets. D. Will was always seen as a valuable player on the Jazz team. Rumor has it the franchise decided to let go of longtime coach Jerry Sloan just to satisfy the basketball star. He had a lot of pull on that team, and that's why his departure from Utah Jazz was seen as such a mind-blowing mistake. They sent him to New Jersey for 2 top 5 picks, Favors and Cantor. Though it was surprising, it seemed like it could be a good move for both the teams. New Jersey got a star player ahead of their relocation, and Utah was working to rebuild, and new players they acquired were tools that could help them preserve their present standing while also looking towards the future. Unfortunately, D. Will didn't end up making as big a splash as he was expected to, and it took the Jazz a long time to pick themselves back up again. Favors and Cantor never ended up working well together, and they just ended up being overshadowed by Rudy Gobert.
Well, that's how the cookie crumbles.
Okay, next up, we're diving into when the Raptors traded Andrea Bargnani to the Knicks for Camby, Novak, Richardson, a 2014 second rounder, a 2016 first rounder, and a 2017 first rounder. The Raptors spent a long time trying to unload Bargnani's massive contract. He wasn't exactly a hugely valuable player. Experts were thinking it was going to take sacrificing a lot of assets to move the former #1 player. Surprise, surprise, James Dolan called, and the Raptors got out from under Bargs and got some legit draft considerations. Bargs was never able to keep up with the way the NBA was moving, and he eventually backed out and went overseas. Just goes to show you can be a good player, but if you can't roll with the punches, you'll be rolling out. We're covering a lot of ground here when it comes to the worst and most shocking trades we've ever seen, but we're not done yet. We're coming back to my city, Los Angeles, and discussing Chris Paul's trade to the Rockets for Patrick Beverley, Sam Decker, Montrezl Harrell, Darren Hillard, DeAndre Liggins, Lou Williams, Kyle Wiltshire, Cash, and a 2018 first rounder. Everyone thought that Paul was going to be opting out as a free agent, but instead he threw us all for a loop in the final year of his deal so that the Rockets could clear space for him via trade and the Clippers could get something back. Lucky for the Clippers, what they got back was Williams, who made his way straight into the All-Star game from the Clippers bench. But the deal was more complicated for Houston. It was an unsurprising landing spot for Paul. The team was a championship contender, but it also didn't make sense because they already had James Harden as point guard. The biggest shocker in this deal was Paul's choice to opt in and head to a team that wasn't exactly his tempo. Nowadays, we hear whispers and rumors that make these crazy trades seem a little less out there, but they're startling nonetheless. Remember when the Cleveland Cavs let go of Irving? He went to the Celtics and the Cavs got Thomas, Crowder, Zizic, and a 2018 first rounder. We had heard rumors of this deal in the days before the deadline, but it still was a jolt to the system. A finals contender sent its second best player to the best team in the conference and got All-Star Thomas and a first rounder. It was crazy that this deal even happened, which is why it's got a place in this video. Now I'm going to get into a trade that's a freaking mouthful to say. The Orlando Magic, Lakers, 76ers, Nuggets swap. Here's what went down. Magic traded Clark, Duhon, and Howard to the Lakers.
I'm listening.
The Lakers gave up Iyenga, McRoberts, and a 2017 second rounder to Magic and Bynum to 76ers. The 76ers let go of Iguodala to the Nuggets, Vucevic, Harkless, and a 2017 first rounder to Magic. And the Nuggets said goodbye to Aflalo, Harrington, a 2013 second rounder, and a 2014 first rounder to Magic.
I'm not following.
Yeah, see why I said that was a mouthful? It's hard to even keep track and completely exhausting to live through. Everyone knew Howard was going somewhere. The Lakers made sense as his landing spot, but I don't think anyone thought that a 4-team sprawl would come out of that trade, looping the Nuggets and Sixers into a chaotic deal that ended up impacting their entire franchises. This swap was so complex that it, of course, didn't turn out as anyone hoped. The Lakers fell apart, Bynum left Philly, a complete mess before he even took the court. Denver turned into a fringe contender before dissolving. Alright, now let's get into a 2-team swap that was so cumbersome, it still makes my jaw drop. 10 players were involved, including 2 Hall of Famers and as many as 5 future first rounders, one of which ended up becoming the first pick. The Celtics traded Garnett, Pierce, Terry White, a 2017 second rounder to the Brooklyn Nets for Bogans, Brooks, Humphreys, Joseph Wallace, a 2014 first rounder, a 2016 first rounder, a 2018 2018 first-rounder and rights to swap in 2015 and 2017. The Nets already had 3 former and future stars in place in William, Johnson, and Lopez, and adding 2 extras seemed like it helped them become a fringe contender. It worked for a single season, but then they were pretty much hopeless for 5 years as they restocked for a future dynasty. The reason why this swap was so major was because the Celtics gave up pretty much their entire franchise identity as a way to rebuild, and Brooklyn placed a bet on its future for one semi-legit chance at taking down LeBron. It was a gamble, that's for sure, and there was a clear winner and a clear loser. Such is the game. Next up, I'm discussing the time when the Clippers traded an unprotected draft pick. So the Cavs tanked pretty quickly after LeBron left Cleveland to go to Miami. They went from being one of the best to one of the worst teams in the league despite having most of their roster still intact. Their main goal at this time was to rebuild and rebuild quickly. They didn't want to waste any time or make any safe moves. Keeping all that in mind, they did a deal with the Clippers at the trade deadline. Los Angeles handed over Baron Davis and an unprotected first-round pick to the Cavs for Moon and Williams. So you might be asking yourself, why was this deal so bad? Well, the draft pick was for Kyrie Irving.
This is fine. I'm okay with the events that are unfolding currently.
NBA history is rich with outrageous and downright bad trades, but these definitely go down as some of the most infamous. Did I miss any trades that you were stunned by? Let me know in the comments, and to make sure you never miss a moment from your favorite athletes, click subscribe. I'm Devin Howard, and I'll see you next time.